want to thank Nam Pham. I've known Nam for a long time, and we are friends, and we've worked together on many projects. There's been projects that Viet Aid has put forth in the community, and some that the community didn't, the neighbors didn't support, not the neighbors, but the community groups didn't support, but we knew it was the right thing to do. We were able to build the housing and build the buildings, and they're beautiful looking. There was one trans-oriented development, 44 units, 0 parking. I said, I don't know if that's gonna fly, and we're able to build it, and you know something, I haven't heard one complaint about it. So, you know, that was many years ago as well. So I wanna thank Nam for his great work also on behalf of Viet Aid and with the CDCs. I also want to recognize and thank Gil Adamore, the chair, and the entire board and membership for asking me to come today. I see Gail over there, and you know, when I was a state representative, I worked very closely with my CDCs, with Codman Square, Viet Aid, Fields Corner, Dorchester Bay. They're probably all in the house. We did a lot of work together on a lot of different projects. Some CDCs were moving quicker than others, and others would move quicker later on. And the work you do is extremely important. So I want to just thank all of you for coming here today. I know I'm standing between you and the governor's forum. And I'm so grateful that I am not up here at the forum. We did it last year. This time last year, I was doing more forums than we ever wanted to do. But they're important. They're important because you need to make sure that your voice is heard. And you need to make sure, as a former state representative, your association would come into my office all the time. And we'd be talking on housing, we'd be talking on money, we'd be talking on programs and grants and different things that were extremely important to all of you and separately throughout your CDCs. And I know how important it is, even more so than having a mayor in your corner sometimes, having the governor of the Commonwealth in your corner, because the governor can affect everyone in this room, not just a few. So I'm going to try and be brief here and be as quick as I can. You know, each year, your organization and all of you collectively and individually help families find housing, and you do much more than that. You create economic opportunities, you advance environmental justice, public safety, and you work with our youth. And that's another opportunity I've had over the years. I want to thank you for all the work that you do, and I'm grateful to call you my partner. We're also joined today, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute, we're joined today by somebody who I knew before I was mayor of the city of Boston. And when I got elected mayor of the city of Boston, I went to her and I said, please, I want you to stay. And that's Sheila Dillon, Chief of Housing for the city of Boston. We just released a plan. As some of you know, probably everyone in the room knows who I'm talking to, but you certainly keep an eye on it. We just put a plan out there, housing, a changing city, Boston 2030 plan for the city of Boston. Sheila Dillon and her team really worked hard with many of you in this room to put that plan together. This plan was carefully researched. We have ambitious goals and we have innovative strategies. We knew our population was growing in the city of Boston, but the housing made this pace a very clear pace of growth. We're on track to reach over 700,000 residents in the city of Boston by the year 2030. A level that hasn't been seen since the 1950s in Boston. Back then, the number of occupants per unit was much higher. To fit that number into today's city, we need to build more units of housing. And we know what the major needs are. We need to do this by protecting and growing our stock of affordable housing for low-income residents. We need to create new units for seniors in senior housing for the fastest growing demographic in our population in the city. We need to create markets and conditions for middle-income housing by adding thousands of new dormitory beds in the city of Boston. We're shooting for 16,000. Thank you. Thanks, Joe. These are ambitious goals, but we need to make sure that we hit these goals. I want to thank Joe for his great work. Joe was instrumental in helping us put this housing plan together by serving on the Housing Task Force and working with the recommendations. We certainly couldn't have done it without Joe's input because we wanted to make sure that we checked all of the housing in the city of Boston. And we can't reach these goals either without the support of a lot of people in this room. I also want to say to you, it's important for us to have a plan for housing. It's important for us to look at housing in the state of Massachusetts, not just the city of Boston, because we need to be able to create opportunities for folks. You know, in the housing plan, we're working on how to do that, but we put in there plans to get to middle-income housing. We hear about it a lot. You hear about it a lot. But we also did a very special emphasis on low-income housing, Because as we look at the federal money drying up, we have to be creative, and I have to be, as mayor, and cities and towns have to be creative of how do we make sure and ensure that we can continue to build good, low-cost housing for people that can't afford it, so they have an opportunity to raise a family and live in a stable environment. Those are the things that we have to continue to do, and those are the things we have to look for, planning for the future. We can't be looking immediately in front of us. As a mayor and as a city, we have to look down the future. As organizations like you have to look at today. How do you fix the solution today? And we need to work with you to make sure that we hit those. Also, when you talk about housing, and I've talked a little bit about Massachusetts and Boston, we're looking in Boston, we're taking a different approach to economic development. We're looking regionally. So we're not looking in a silo where it's just the city of Boston. We're looking regionally, and we created what's called the Red Line Corridor, working with Cambridge and Somerville and Quincy and Braintree and Boston around economic development. And we've had very successful meetings, and we're working with the Mass Mayors Association to think about how we create opportunities for economic opportunities in the city. So we want to build industry and build capacity. And that's important for us to do. But we also have to look at housing regionally. We have to work with each other to make sure that this housing stock is created throughout the region that we're talking about. In Boston, we're proud of our 19% affordable housing stock in the city. But we need to make sure other cities and towns look at that and say we need to create more housing as well. Because we can't have one city or one town share the burden, and it's not a burden, but the burden of trying to come up with ways of paying for affordable housing. And when I say burden, I mean by affordable housing, paying for it and building it. We have to share that. We have to figure out, think regionally. So as we talk about creating a larger economic base in a region, we have to say, how are we going to make sure that people can afford to live here as well? So as we're creating good jobs for people, we need to make sure that we create good housing for people. I was in New York last week. And I was in Brooklyn. I went through Brooklyn, and they were talking about how they've done things in Brooklyn with zoning, and they're building housing, and they're building industry, and they're bringing manufacturing jobs back, and they're doing all kinds of great things. And when I went to Industry City, there was 4 buildings there, and they were manufacturing buildings back in the 20s and 30s. And I had a chance to go through the buildings and tour, and what I saw, there was a whole bunch of companies that came from China back to America, or from different countries back to America, that people wanted to build their product here in the city, in New York City. And as I went through one of the factories, there was about 300 people working in a 3D printing factory. And I looked around, and I saw the people in the room, and I said, wow, this looks like Boston. The people working in the room, and I walked around, and I was talking to young people, and I had a young African-American gentleman. He was there. He was so excited. He wanted to show me what he was doing for work, and I said, what's this? He's building out a printer. So the owners of the company kind of went off, so I had him alone. I said, well, what do you get paid? He said, I started at $12 an hour. I'm up to $13.98 now, and I can make as much as I want as they continue to grow in this company. I said, what about health care? We have health care in this company. What about, do you have a pension? I don't have a pension, but I have a 401k. They match my 401k. And I thought to myself, and the place was loaded with young people that were looking for opportunities for employment. These are people that had a high school degree or maybe a GED. And as I talked about it afterwards, I went over and I was talking to the person who put this together, the owner of the industry, and I said, well, what's going on here? He said, I'm bringing people in here to let them, teach them and work with them and let them get a job and make some money. But also we're training people for the future of the workforce. So as we look at what's happening around the country, we have to say, how do we make something like that happen here in the city of Boston? How do we make something like that happen here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? We do it by working together. We do it by all of us working together. So I'm grateful to be here today. I'm grateful to be able to say a few words to you. I want to thank you for the great work that you do. I want to thank you for all that you do in your communities and providing stable housing and providing economic development and providing opportunities for young people and providing in so many different ways what you do. I know every CDC is different in the room, but you have a common core. You care about people, making sure people advance and succeed. So I'm just here to say thank you, welcome you. As I said, Charlie Baker walked in, I saw Charlie, and I think Martha Colt was on her way, but I said, before you walked in, Charlie, I said, this time last year I was up here doing things like this. I'm glad I'm not. Enjoy. Have a great day.